I'm delighted to be joined now by award-winning writer and podcaster Julia Hobsbawm. She's in the studio. She's got her new book. Let's give it a little plug. Working Assumptions. Can you see that? Those listening on the radio. It's a tome which has been described as a must-read for anybody concerned about the future of work by Carl Fry of Oxford University. And it's really interesting, this, Julia, because obviously I think people are worried about the march of AI. I'm worried about it as a journalist. Going to have robots writing for me in future on the Telegraph. But just in general, why did you write the book and what's it about?
Well, thank you for having me. My
Pleasure.
First time on GBNews.
Oh, a GBNews virgin, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome.
I wrote a book in the pandemic called The Nowhere Office that said hybrid working was coming. Lots of people got very upset about that and said, you know, I was doing down the future of work. Everybody needed to get back to the office. And I got incredibly gripped by the story of what's happening around work and the workplace, which is just the gift that keeps on giving, actually. And I started writing a column called Working Assumptions for Bloomberg. And then I realised that what people need is more than just the future of the office, because COVID happened, you've got large numbers of people out of the workforce, you've got a changed attitude to the way we live and work. Yes. At the same time, ChatGPT came along and has gone from 1 million users in 5 days to 100 million users, and yet nobody completely knows what it is and what it means. And you've got a massive generational shift. So I wanted to write a book that really covered the waterfront of all of the changes that are going on. And there are a lot. It's really like that Oscar-winning movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once. And in fact, the book is full of cultural references, because if you turn on your telly or you go to the movies or you listen to a song, you will find people are obsessed by work all the time.
Well, they're talking about work a lot. They're doing work a lot, which obviously takes up a huge proportion of time. I do think it's interesting, the kind of post-COVID picture. For instance, even on this channel, you know, the amount of more remote interviews that we're using. In the old days, you had to physically be there, and that's changed. But I mean, back to that point about me as a journalist being worried about the march of AI. Should I be worried? Should white-collar workers be worried about being taken over?
Yeah, you should be worried, because traditionally technology was something that affected the blue-collar workers.
Yes.
Anybody watching your programme now who's wearing overalls for a daily job knows all about automation and has known for a long time that the robots are coming. Interestingly, anybody who is watching your programme who works, say, in an operating theatre, in medicine, in the very high scientific fields, they also know about AI. But it's the keyboard warriors of white-collar work that have been blindsided by the speed at which automated technology, artificial intelligence has come in.
It's crept up on us, hasn't it?
It's crept up on you. I mean, my worry isn't just that there's a big washing through of jobs and that's disruptive. And I don't think all the jobs are going to go from AI. And I'm absolutely not with the tech bros like Elon Musk, who says, you know, in a cavalier way, oh, yes, you know, the jobs are going to be taken and that's no bad thing. Everybody's going to be on universal basic income. You know, it makes me want to absolutely run screaming from the room. But jobs will be lost. But more importantly, it means that everybody's literally got a digital co-worker that they've got to figure out and understand. And the younger workers may have been growing up more with technology, the digital natives. But those of us a little bit older, it's another thing to learn. It's another skill set. And it's a problem. It is complicated.
It's interesting you mentioned sort of generational divides in work, because I was interested in what you write about in the book about this separation in thinking between, say, millennials and Gen Zs, and then boomers and older people in the workplace. I mean, we've seen this play out a lot in culture wars. I was only having a discussion with somebody about this actually yesterday, and like younger people coming into an industry and wanting to dispense with some of the traditional ways of doing things because they associate it with imperialism and colonialism. I mean, this is in the field of dance, funny enough, but the point is here, I mean, there's a big conflict, isn't there, between younger and older generations and what they believe and how they approach work.
Yeah, I think that the generational shifts are as serious for the workplace and for policy around work as generative AI. And that's because there is just a gulf now between the generations working in the workforce, which still include the boomers and Generation X, and those I call in the book the amazing generation of millennials, Zs, and actually alphas in 2026, the generation of babies are coming, actually, they're going to turn 16.
Yeah.
And so you future cast to something like 2030, and you're really going to have a dominant class of worker that have grown up entirely with social media and the internet, that sometimes they're called Generation Glass.
Yes.
And there is a huge difference in attitudes and in understanding of the way the world works.
A boomer interpretation is that they're lazier. Is that fair, Julia?
I don't think they're lazy, although I took enormous pleasure in quoting Jodie Foster's interview in the book in which she mocked Gen Z and you know, even millennials who are not that much older than Gen Z. You know, if I do a lot of corporate advisory work, and millennial managers are pulling their hair out at how they manage Gen Zs, for instance.
But aren't they like very focused on work-life balance, and I'd like a 4-day week and I want to work exactly how I want? I
think it's really important that we don't frame this in the way that work was framed immediately post-pandemic, with even people like your illustrious colleague, Mr. Rees-Mogg, kind of going, get back to the office, you know, lazy gits kind of thing. I think we're way beyond that. We have to be much more sophisticated, which is what you do with a generation that experienced work in their bedroom on their laptop. Telling them to now come into the office, which is expensive, using social skills they may not have developed, is a different deal to those of us for whom going into the office and hanging out in a team feels great. Yes. So we have to understand how things have changed.
Well, also, I just think in terms of sort of elbow grease, there's a perception that people perhaps, I don't know, born before 2000 have a different work ethic to those born after. Is that unfair?
Oh, it's totally unfair. I mean, I'm a multiple parent of all those generations. I'm even a grandmother, actually, of a baby alpha.
Julia, no.
Yes, hashtag young granny. But the point is, no, but they don't want to work in the same way. I mean, I think what we're seeing the end of, and I think arguably this is actually a positive thing, is the end of the era that says those who go to university, get a degree at a posh or Ivy League university, or God forbid an MBA, they get to rule the world, they get a job for life, they get to tell the rest of us how to run our lives, and that's all great. That track has stopped. So we have to reinvent the world of work, and it is more flexible, it is more genuinely inclusive of people with different ideas, backgrounds, generations. That's the good news. The bad news is it's really complicated. Yeah, it is really complicated, but this book can help. Absolutely. So let me just show you it again. Working Assumptions is here by Julia. Thank you very much for coming in this morning. You know, my solution to this is just to have a few jobs at once, a portfolio career, so that if one goes wrong, at least you can fall back on the other. Julia, I don't know whether that's a good idea or not, but thank you very much and good luck with this. Thank you. Thank you to all of my guests today.